Hello everyone, and welcome to episode 6 of Adventures in Osaka, although actually most of this video's content takes place in places besides Osaka. On Sunday, me and a few of the other international students signed up to go to a Mochizuki event. Now, Mochizuki is kind of a traditional festival celebrated around the New Year, where we make mochi. You steam rice, as usual, and you put it in this large stone bowl and beat it with a large wooden hammer. And you add water as you beat it, and it makes this really kind of gooey, sticky, not paste actually, it's very elastic, and it's very good. And the community nearby our school put it on, and they were very warm and lovely people. And at the very end, kind of the last round, they let each of the international students have a go, and so they gave me a very large wooden hammer and let me smash mochi, and it was very, very fun. On Monday, because we didn't have class, as I mentioned before, we decided to go to Kyoto. Most of the places we went, I'd been already, but this time Maruyama Koen had some performers. There was also Masamune the samurai dog and a man playing the Japanese flute, and Masamune the samurai dog has my heart because he is the most adorable thing I've ever seen. His little sword. It's so cute. Then we went to Chion-in Temple, a Buddhist temple, very famous in Kyoto, and it's huge! Unfortunately, the largest building was under construction, so you actually couldn't go in and see it. Kind of a downside of temples is that you actually have to pay an entrance fee to see some of the gardens and more fancy things rather than just the entrance. Unlike shrines, which I'm pretty sure are universally free. I'm sure there's probably an exception. I mean, if you want to make a wish, you have to pay 5 yen, but otherwise, going into the shrine has always been free for me so far. You just have to be respectful. Don't be Logan Paul. Then there was another temple we were going to go to, but it was actually kind of late at night. So it's at the top of a very large hill, and we were kind of making our way up there as we stopped at places to get sweets, because there's so many sweets in Kyoto, especially green tea flavored. If you want something green tea flavored, they have it in Kyoto, whatever it is. So then kind of speeding through the rest of the week, because that was just classes getting going. We finally started doing some real studious projects. I mean, Japanese classes always had homework so far, but the other classes haven't really been that difficult. So moving right on into Friday, which was our flight to Hokkaido, because domestic flights within Japan are actually fairly cheap. Going all the way to Hokkaido from Osaka was only $70, so that was pretty good, actually. Coming back was a little bit more expensive because our trip took place during the Lunar New Year festivities, so supply and demand, the tickets returning to Osaka were more expensive than they usually would have been. On Friday evening, we landed in Sapporo, which is the capital of Hokkaido, and we decided to book a Airbnb instead of a hotel because it's cheaper, and actually it was quite nice. The building was kind of creepy from the outside, because we looked out at it as we were walking. We were like, and then we stepped inside, and for some reason the lights didn't come on when we got in. So the hallway was creepy as hell. It looked like something out of a horror movie. And then we were kind of getting nervous about our stay there, and then we unlocked the door, and it was this very cozy, fully furnished apartment with plenty of room for all 4 of us, and bedspreads for all 4 of us. So it was actually quite a nice place to stay over the weekend. Kind of the nice thing about landing in Sapporo is there is so much snow, which for some of my friends who hadn't seen that much snow in their lives, was very startling. For me, it made me think so much of home. One of my friends said I was like a fish in water because I started running around in the snow next to the road because it piles up. And sometimes in Hokkaido, it feels like there's more snow than back home, and maybe there actually is, but part of it is because back home, the terrain is generally so flat, that the snow just kind of piles up on top of itself and doesn't really like slide. Where in Hokkaido, because everything is hills and mountains, the snow lands on top of the hill, so it looks like there's this giant mound of snow everywhere. But it's because there's actually kind of a ridge there. I never actually fell to the ground once. That was one thing our teacher was kind of concerned about when we said we were going to Hokkaido. She's like, make sure you don't slip on the ice. And I'm like, I'll be fine. And I was. On Saturday, we went to Otaru, which is kind of a very picturesque city in Hokkaido. By Japanese standards, it's a very small city. So we spent the first part of the day after arriving kind of wandering around, seeing some of the sights, and we ate lunch, kind of a famous sushiro sushi place. And then there were a lot of kind of picturesque sights like the Otaru Canal. We took lots of pictures, and we visited a famous glass store in Otaru. So you can get like hand-blown glass made in Otaru, and it's very famous for that. So we wandered around those shops, and they were very beautiful, and I was afraid I would break something. I did not. Then at night in Otaru, a scene that's very, very famous. It said on the sign that it was the third best night view in all of Hokkaido. I don't know what the top two are, but it said it was the third best. I can kind of concur, because at the top of Mount Tenguyama, which is what it was, you look down and you can see Otaru spread out below you, and it's very picturesque because it's a very round but fairly steep mountain. That's why there's a ski slope there, so you can take a ropeway car, a gondola, all the way up to the top of the mountain because there's a ski resort there. And you can have dinner there, and it's called Tenguyama because it's one of the famous locations of Tengu, which are Japanese gods, monsters, spiritual beings. Tengu are kind of complicated creatures. Part of it is because they kind of exist now as fusions between Japanese Shinto beliefs and Buddhist beliefs. But the one that the mountain was most famous for is, I would say, definitely more closely resembling a mountain god. So there's a small shrine at the top of the mountain and lots of Tengu decorations. The Tengu is usually represented as a man shape with like red skin and a very long nose. And so there are lots of decorations of the Tengu there at the ski resort and by the shrine, in the shrine. And the Tengu is also kind of a guardian god of travel, of safe passage. And so I asked the Tengu for safe passage back to Osaka. I believe that the Tengu granted it because I don't think anything went bad when we were going back to Osaka. So it's all good. And then you could look down over the city, and it was just beautiful, all spread out below you. So it was a very good view with the snow and everything, and you could eat. And we ate dinner up on the resort because we had a discount ticket because we bought a package to go all the way up. Then we went back down the mountain and went back to the canal in Otaru, and the canal was all lit up, kind of an event called Yuki Akari, lights on the snow, and it was pretty good. Description. My phone died again after I took a few pictures of the canal, because there was actually a second Yuki Akari event going on, not at the canal, but at another kind of park area. That was almost more impressive. Like, it didn't have the effect of the lights on the water, but I think it was more impressive because so many people put effort into making these snow sculptures and putting the lights in them, and it was very magical, a very beautiful walk. I think it might have been dedicated to Valentine's Day, but there were no couples together with me and my friends on this Hokkaido trip. We were just friends. The second Yuki Akari went on forever and ever and ever. We were just like, oh my god, there's more. So by that time we were actually getting quite cold because it's much colder in Hokkaido than it is in Osaka, obviously. And kind of the dangerous thing about Otaru is the sea breeze. The sea breeze is vicious. And then on Sunday, which was our last day in Hokkaido, we returned from Otaru back to Sapporo on Sunday night and kind of crashed. And on Sunday, we spent most of our time adventuring through Sapporo. We tried the famous miso ramen of Sapporo, went to the Shiroi Koibito chocolate factory, which is famous for its white chocolate, there in Hokkaido, and we got a tour and got some chocolates there. We went to kind of a government building where there was some history of Hokkaido and kind of the interaction with the Ainu. Actually, one interesting thing is Japan has been in a territorial dispute with Russia over a set of islands north of Hokkaido, the large main island of Hokkaido, that pretty much both countries have been claiming as theirs over the past, most of a century. Kind of going into the indigenous population of Hokkaido, because the Japanese history of Hokkaido is fairly recent, actually, only the past 150 years, but there were still people there before that, some of which are more ancient Japanese peoples, and some of whom are Ainu, which is an indigenous population native both to Japan and to Eastern Russia. So the Ainu are actually a fairly disadvantaged people in Japan. It's a kind of an interesting cultural parallel to see here in Japan of an indigenous group that is disadvantaged, because oftentimes when you think of Japan, you think of this surprising amount of homogeneity that you do not see in the United States or places like UK, where there's just so much racial diversity, where there's not that much in Japan. But they still have issues of racism that you just don't think about and you don't hear about very often. So that was interesting to see. We headed back from Hokkaido to Osaka. We took our flight. Everything went fine. The only thing is the flight was delayed like 20 minutes, so we ended up, apparently we actually caught the last train back to where we live in Osaka. So we got lucky, but we didn't come back until like 2 in the morning. It was so early, and then we still had a trip to the beer factory today, something our school had scheduled, because the Asahi Beer Company is a very famous Japanese alcohol brand. They make whiskey too, but their beer is what they're most famous for. I'm not really fond of beer of any kind. I was just like, yup, those are hops. Yup, that's how you make beer. Because there's a lot of beer factories in Wisconsin. One of the attractions, I guess you could say, was a collection of beer cans from around the world. And they had one display that was like North American beer, and I'm like, Wisconsin, 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 Wisconsin. And my international students were looking at me like, you're telling me like all of these came from your state? I'm like, well, not all of them, but a lot of them. And then they gave us a free tasting of different kinds of beer. Apparently, I am a dark beer fan because I wanted to drink the black beer. I tried all of the different samples, and they didn't give you like this little like sample. They give you a whole a whole glass to try, and then they were like, no, you should try this one. And so I originally wasn't going to have like a full glass, like a full second glass, because I feel bad in Japan leaving a drink half finished. So I was like, I guess I'll just drink the whole thing. And then I was just like, because I wanted to try all of them to see maybe it's just this one that I don't really like. So I asked my friend, if you get another one, can I just like go halvesies with you? And she was like, sure. But then my teacher went up behind me and she was like, come on, let's get another one. And I went, yes, sure, because I have a really hard time saying no to my teacher. So I decided to get a full black, and kanpai, and then drank. And so, surprise, I'm kind of a lightweight. I got fairly drunk, despite it being morning. So we went to lunch right away after that, and and then we had class. So I needed to sober up very quickly. So that is everything, and I will see you all next week.